you need deep roots to stand firm when it gets tough. It's easy when everything's nice. It's easy to be a Christian.
I think we tend to hyper focus on our current sort of season in life and forget about anything else. When I met Chris at uni and we're studying together, the only thing that matters is this assignment.
But where we started from is humus, as in ground. That's the Latin word for fertile ground, is humus. And so the word human means fertile ground.
And they sort of answer two different questions, where science, it answers the how, and religion answers the why.
Why? Yeah.
It's like a deeper layer, like Father's saying this. The Bible is a book of theology. It's about ultimate truth to life and to existence. And
any scientific breakthrough is good for us. It's good for the Bible. It's good for Christianity, because it just proves what's already being said.
Yeah.
Because the Bible was never understood as a book that's supposed to prove what was being said. No, it's the book of spiritual truths. Now,
welcome back to Parable Podcast. Today we are with Chris. How are you, Chris?
Fantastic.
That's awesome. We have two guests today with us. First of all, we have Father Nemanja from, he's a Serbian Orthodox priest from Blacktown. How are you, Father?
very good, thank you.
That's good. We also have George from Christ in Culture. George has an Instagram and a YouTube. Go follow that. How are you, George?
good. Thanks for having me.
That's good. Okay, we'll go straight into it. On our last podcast, we asked one of our father, the father that was on the podcast, we asked him to leave us a question to give to the next guest or speaker. And his question was, what's your top tip to holiness?
Top tip to holiness. Go and see and find Jesus Christ where he invited you to come.
Nice.
George, any thoughts?
Listen to your spiritual father. I've learned the hard way too many times that when you try and do things your own way and you think you figured something out, you're going to come out second best.
Yeah.
Father, what do you mean by come and see?
Well, there's that famous passage in the Bible when they're calling Nathaniel to come, and we found the one that Moses and the prophets are talking about. It's Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth. And can anything good come out of Nazareth? And then instead of convincing him and explaining why they're right and how it all fits in and everything, just said, "Well, come and see." And I think it's the only way that you can actually talk to someone who's trying to find God, Jesus, spirituality, his own place, his own relationship with God, is to, come and see, and come to the church, come where Jesus Christ invited you to come, where he said he will send his Holy Spirit and where he will be with us. So instead of, debating someone and trying to explain to him in theory why he or her should come this way or that way, do this or do that, just come and see. See for yourself. Once you experience it for yourself, once you taste it, then tell me if you don't like it, or, it's up to you then.
Do you think boredom gets in the way, or the way we construct things? Do you think that plays a big role? The way the church puts a program, people come, it's boring. Oh, it's boring. Do you think it matters about what the church does, or is it on the individual?
Is that in a sense that the church itself is like church services can be boring? Is that?
Yeah, either church service, youth meetings, or any other sort of church function gathering.
Well, depends on the way that you look at it. But I completely understand people when they say that it might be boring. Yes, if especially, for example, in the Serbian Orthodox Church, most of our services are done. The parts that the priest is saying are now, in the last maybe 30, 40 years, are mostly in the modern vernacular Serbian, so it can be understood. Most of the choir responses are in Church Slavonic, which is one of the so-called dead languages, or like an ancient language not really used in everyday conversations. So that's going to be hard to understand, especially because a lot of those words sound similar to modern words, but they don't have the same meaning. And yes, it might have the same sort of structure every Sunday. So if you tend to drift away, if you're not involved with it, absolutely it's going to get boring, and you're standing there for a couple of hours thinking about something else. It's going to be very boring. But try watching a movie in a foreign language that you don't understand for an hour and a half.
No subtitles.
Yeah, and my challenge would be, don't go for your phone for more than 30 seconds.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's very. I'm not saying that you need to understand every single word, but you need to be involved. You need to be, your heart and your mind needs to be connected with what's happening, and then it's not going to get boring. Like baptisms, for example. When I do baptisms, and they go on for about 45 minutes in the Serbian church, what I do is after each segment, which goes on for about 10 minutes, I stop and I explain what we just did, what's the significance, what we're going to do next. And then my experience is that people actually pay attention and they participate prayerfully. And most of them come and thank me later, say, "Oh, this is the first time we actually understood what's going on and why we're doing this and what's the meaning of that." And because and when you do it like that, but you can't do liturgy like that or something, but in these cases you can. And it could go on for 4.5 hours, they will still be there. But if it was, 45 minutes of you just standing there and people are doing something that you have no idea what and why and how and what's going to happen next and when is this going to end, then we would all be crying just like the baby.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Not wrong.
No, I definitely noticed that. It's actually quite timely, not timely, but topical with the parable that we have today. The parable of the sower. There's that sort of motif that goes throughout of it's about actually listening and what it looks like to actually listen. And listening's not just hearing, but participating, as you were saying. Just before we read any of it, there's a part in it which says, this is in the Gospel of Mark. It says in chapter 4, verse 13, it says, "And he said to them, 'Do you not understand this parable? How then will you understand all the parables?'" So, just like in research, this was the first actual parable Jesus told. And actually thinking about it, we probably should have done it for the first episode. But Christ is saying this parable is the lens by which you should look at all the other parables. And how do you interpret that, George, Father?
I'm going to be a fly on the wall for this one.
Yeah.
Well, this one is probably maybe because it's the first one. It might be one of the easier ones because he eases you into it and he explains it himself. And he, the reason why, at least how I look at it in the 21st century, if we can call this the 21st century, when you hear someone in the 1920s saying this is the 20th century,
Yeah.
So, today, all this information is so easy to get. Like, I have a couple of different Bibles on my phone. You have your search engines and all that. And now with the AI as well, you can. The other day, I was driving and having a full conversation with. Can I say the name of the AI?
Go for it.
with that ChatGPT thing, you can actually talk to it. You can just and you don't have to touch anything. So it's
honestly, I love it.
While you're driving, I had a conversation on a spiritual topic and with some very creative answers and informational and all that.
Were they accurate?
Yes. From mostly yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can lie to you blatantly and without a shame.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was all good. However, if you ask me now, what did it tell me,
Yeah.
and what did I learn from it? I can't remember a thing because it didn't ask for any effort. I asked him. He gave me the information because obviously I didn't know. So I asked a question. I got the answer straight away, like in seconds. You ask a next question, he gives you the next answer. Goes on or if you Google things and stuff. So you go to a footnote in your Orthodox study Bible, you read it, you close the book. Next day you have no idea.
Yeah.
Because you didn't put in any effort. It's easier to when you put in an effort to learn something, then it's gonna stuck. And that's gonna last. If you're gonna do if you're studying for an exam or something, and if you need to go through a book and you need to get that book from a library or find it somewhere in your own home library, read it, write it down, underline, do a bit of research on your own, you're going to remember that stuff.
Yeah.
But if it's just something that someone just sat down and explained it to you and he told you the answer, it's a quick fix, but it doesn't change anything in your life. So Jesus Christ asking his listeners to get involved and to use their minds when he's talking to them makes sense, because just telling them the answers is not really setting them up for life.
Yeah, and I think you're just telling people answers without thinking properly. They get a very superficial, and they don't even really care. And it even says here, which I found very interesting, that Jesus, people will be like, why are you speaking in parables? It's too confusing. And he says, therefore I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. So the people who don't see or hear or understand, like, I can't understand, he's making it even harder. He's like, okay, I'm going to even make it harder. You want to learn it, you learn it yourself. You come and you learn it. You take the time.
I think that is quite powerful in the sense that parables especially, like it requires a bit of delving into. It requires a bit of thinking about it and having a deep thought about it. And I think doing that and being in that process, as you were saying, Father, is like participation. It's kind of taking that step to research. If Christ said, this is this, or like the 10 Commandments, for example, very yes or no, it's hard to apply sometimes. But when we delve deeper, and I've noticed this even just by doing the podcast, whenever we've delved deeper, it's actually something that's stuck with me, because I've maybe explored the analogy or explored the symbolism, and actually I think it's helped me.
Yeah,
for sure.
And it also it equips you for future as well, because once you start using your mind that way, and you stop being gullible. People can't just manipulate you into following something that's not really true.
Yeah.
We have shepherds in the church, but we also have hirelings throughout the history of the church. And it's not just, you put your feet up on the table and you relax because there's a priest that's going to think about, every issue that I have in my life. No. Yeah. You have to do a lot of that as well.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is if you actually find some ways, from very early on, find some ways to put that into practice in your life.
Yeah.
Do you feel like we're losing self-accountability today than ever before? Do you feel like, I'm this way because this priest, he's no good. So,
just doing my job, as Germans would say.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah.
Like, do you think that accountability is down the drain?
Well, I wouldn't say it's down the drain. That's laziness, and laziness was always there. And people tend to blame others for their own mistakes since Adam and Eve. It's nothing new, but it's a cheap way out. So I was just doing what I was told. What do I care?
Yeah, I would say we're getting a bit lazier. It's something since TikTok has come out, especially the sort of 10-second videos have really eaten up our attention span. And it makes it hard for someone to really want to sit down, pick the Bible up, read it. Like Father is saying, think about it. What does this mean? Not just to skim read. I tick my box, 5 minutes, I'm done. Let me go back to playing games or whatever. There's a lot of intention. You need a lot of intention when you're reading. And it's hard to go from scrolling to picking up a book and reading it and then trying to understand it. And it's definitely a big problem through every age group. I know a lot of people like to say, oh, it's just the young generation. I'm like, no, anyone that's got a phone can suffer from this.
Yeah.
It's
actually quite funny. We talk about this often. Even the podcast, we have obviously we post a lot on Instagram, and we always talk about this, like the views that we get on Instagram are way more, and it makes sense that it's a shorter form, but like the ratio is crazy.
It's not even close.
It's not even close.
Yeah, one video got 1.5 million. That same
Views.
full video is like 300 views. The full video on
150 max. Yeah. And out of those 150 views, maybe like 30 people finished the actual episode. So we're outing you. But actually, whoever's listening to this is probably the good one. So that's good.
Yeah, the 5 people that stayed.
Yeah.
To the end,
My
please.
mom, my sister.
Your second account.
Yeah, second account.
Some random bot.
That's it, yeah. No, but it's good. I think we'll get into it.
Yeah, sure. I'll add one more thing. Like, even for me, I still use the Bible on my phone. Like, I think I'm even in this trap of these video games and this. So even for me, it's still a journey to sit down and really prepare and look at it. And so, yeah, I think it's hard for all of us. And just because, for example, if I'm sitting here and I'm looking, I'm no better than anyone else.
Yeah, totally agree with that. 100%.
For sure. Maybe one more thing before we get into the first ground. There's a motif in the Bible, and obviously for this one, symbolically of seeds. I'll leave it an open-ended question. What do you think the significance of the seed? So in the parable, it's explored as the word that is spread across all the ground, and the ground is us. How we take the seed and whether it grows or it doesn't. There's also the mustard seed and the symbolism of that. Father, what's the significance of seeds and growth and fruits, and we hear the fruits of the Spirit and so on and so forth.
Exactly that. Thank you. Well, first of all, that was, and for ages after, probably until maybe 100 to 200 years ago, that was an agricultural society. So when you talk about seeds and crops and things like that, that's something that people are familiar with. They know exactly what you're talking about. It's not now these days you have to explain to some people what seeds are, how they work. That you actually put them into ground and then they die in the ground, but then from that death comes new life, which is 100-fold, and better than it was before, and feeds new life, and it's the whole circle. So I think it's just it's a handy tool for that kind of that era and that society. I mean, but seeds are seeds. They still work the same way today.
Mm-hmm.
It just takes a little bit of extra effort for some people to just sort of put their mind into it and actually think about it, put it in that context of that. Yes, actually, seeds are not just seeds. Because when you read the Bible, even in English, and let alone, I hope that most of us at least know that it wasn't really written in English.
I thought it was written in King James.
King James. Yeah, not old.
He wrote it. But even in English, when you read it, as many times as you read it, you always find something new, something that's going to be more inspiring, more revealing than the last time. Let alone when in the original way, one word could have 19 different layers of meaning, and especially if you combine it with the next word or the previous word, it changes completely. And it was. So we need to. This is a God-inspired text. It's not a factographic scientific text, but it is spiritually true, and that's what's important. So the way it is composed will always be relevant and true in every society, in every era, including our own and the next one that's coming after. So seeds as such are obviously not only something that was topical back then, but something that has a deeper significance for us, for our ancestors, for people coming after us. And it is exactly because that seed that God puts in us, that seed of meaning, as the Holy Fathers call it, is what is growing inside of us if we cultivate it.
Yeah, it's really powerful, I think. Yeah. I listened to a contemplation, like a few, but one of them was from Jonathan Pajot. I know, George, you know him. He's an Orthodox iconographer. You know him, Father, as you can tell. He explores it symbolically, of course. And he kind of talks about it as a seed is like a dot in essence, but within the seed is the pattern of a tree, of a big tree, so on and so forth. And then they go on a bit further. He can talk about how the seed is kind of like an idea, and the idea is the word of God, or it can be extrapolated to just ideas that we have. But once we place that idea within a fertile environment, it grows, and the seed has the potential to bear fruit. Recently, I was thinking about it, and I'm recently an uncle, thank God. Last Friday, thank you. Our sister's all good. But jokingly, I said to my sister as I was looking at them, I was like, Tracy, my sister's name. I'm sure she doesn't mind me outing her. I was like, you know that I love him more than you. It was kind of jokingly, kind of true. Because he's like so small, so helpless, but he has the potential, and it's from that potential that we know the saints, and we know the potential of evil. We know the potential of people turning into Hitler, so on and so forth. But we know the potential of people turning into the great saints that we honor. So in that seed is the potential of so much more. And really interestingly is that when a tree grows, it bears fruit. And interestingly, the fruit is nothing for the tree itself. It's for others to take and to benefit from. And from that, it 100-fold in terms of spiritual growth for others. So that was my kind of contemplation about seeds.
And there's more seed in the fruit as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So that bears even more. And that's from giving, which is like the paradox that we always see biblically. I just went on a tangent. But I think we can go into to start reading.
Sure. On the same day, Jesus went out of... So this is the parable of the sower in Matthew chapter 13, verse 1. On the same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the sea, and great multitudes were gathered together to him, so that he got into a boat and sat, and the whole multitude stood on the shore. Then he spoke many things to them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell by the wayside.
And the birds came. Yeah.
Do you want to keep reading?
Yeah, just that bit after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. And the birds came and devoured them. Yeah, okay. Do you want to stop there?
Yeah, we'll stop there.
Okay, sorry. So, as you said before, this is the only parable that's explained by Jesus.
I'm not sure if it's the only one, but it's just famous of. I
don't know much, but
yeah.
it's one of them.
Yeah.
And so if you read, so right now he's saying there's a sower that sows the field. Some fell by
the
wayside, and then the birds came and took them, and took and ate the seed. So then Jesus explains the parable. This is when the seeds fell on the wayside and the birds took them. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, Then the wicked one comes and snatches it away, what was sown in his heart. Okay. This is he who received seed by the wayside. All right. So he's basically explaining sower sows on the wayside, birds come and take it. He's saying that the birds are the wicked that come and take the seed away to make the seed grow. So, in your opinion, or in the church, or what in today's society, what do you think the bird represents? Come and take the seed. What takes the word away from us today?
We can blame a lot of modern technology or people, but the fact is, it's demons, it's the devil, and the fallen angels, and this is very often overlooked. In not only in today's like secular society, but in the church as well, because the subject is a little bit uncomfortable. People don't like to talk about it. People don't like to think about it. But it is what it is. It's present. It's real. Probably one of the the famous saying that the devil's greatest victory is to convince people that he doesn't exist. So, of course, that when we hear the invitation, we receive the calling, let's say, from God. And everybody does. Not everybody acts upon it. Not everybody answers. But that seed, that calling stays there. So the only way for our enemy to separate us, and that's his only task, that's his only goal, is to separate us from God. Everything else is just means to an end. But that's the end, to separate you from God. He will just take your attention somewhere else, or he can't control it. He can't take the word for himself, but he can put your focus somewhere else. And that's what they do, successfully for ages now. But in every age, it's a different tool that they might use. So today we might have, technology or online, I don't know what to call them.
Like social media.
Yeah, not only social media. I don't like to put the blame only on one thing or something, because then it turns out to be only like one generation is in a problem. Everybody else. No, it's all sorts of things. Basically, anything that is capable of stealing your attention easily, and that means that happens to everybody who did not train his attention, as obviously I didn't. But
when I was reading,
when you have that, when you go to your attention gym every day, and you learn how to focus, how to stay concentrated, then it's going to be harder for him to do that. But he's not going to give up. He's not going to say, this is too hard for me, I'm going to stop. No. Especially when it gets hard, he's going to get more involved.
The devil will never give up.
No. Yeah.
Do you think the devil... Well, I know you said it's not a today issue, but let's say today you were the devil. How would you lose someone's attention the best way possible?
I don't want to give him ideas. But I can tell you what I see around myself and what he does to me and to others around. It's entertainment. We get bored easily. You watch an interesting movie, and there's 5 seconds of boring dialogue or something. You go for your phone. What's new? Or you, it's like opening your same social media app over and over again, like 500 times a day, to just check. Or receiving a text, you can't wait. You're driving, you just have to see. What if it's important? It's never that important. Yeah. So it's not that easy today to take. However, I'm not talking just about like general population. That we all like that. We all sort of our attention span is shorter today. That without a doubt, and obviously screen time plays a big role. So podcast shouldn't be too long as well. But
no, we'll just make it into like 15 episodes.
Exactly.
10 minutes each.
No, with Sydney traffic, it's fine. You can watch a 3-hour
That's right,
podcast
that's
on
right.
your drive home from work.
Traffic's our biggest sponsor.
But it's it's not that hard today because there's so many tools around, and even if you don't have that, then you have your worries of this world. You have your children to feed or bills to pay, your mortgage to pay off. You have you can't find a parking spot. It's like there's a million things that will come into your mind, or you start praying. If you don't know what to think of it, just try praying. And after 5 minutes, you'll see that all those topics that were long forgotten, or suddenly it's somewhere from the your backbone somewhere coming back into your mind. Say, hey, well, what about this? What about this issue that you started 4.5 years ago, and and it didn't bother you until now. And now it's the most important thing in the world that you have to think about and respond. And so it's not that hard coming to church. You stand there, and the priest is giving a sermon. He gives 3 sentences on something that already. Your mind goes away. And say, oh, yeah, my back hurts. You're standing there for a long time, and what should I do next? And
yeah.
There's so many things that's going to happen, and not everybody is the same. But he will always. He and they will always use different approach to different people, whatever works. If one thing doesn't work on me, it's going to be something else. If it works on you, it's going to be. Yeah. But we always have the same tool to defend, and that's prayer. And once you start doing that and you start practicing that, that's the safest way to defend yourself.
How can you?
If it's too hard, we can pray to God to teach us. It's there's different types of prayer. We go to church for our communal prayer, for worship services, but I'm talking not only about that. I'm talking about your private prayers at home, prayers at your so-called dead time. When in traffic or somewhere, or waiting for something. And that's very often these days in today's society. We have a lot of so-called dead time. Use the dead time for prayer. You don't have to carry a prayer book with you, or just use your what we call the Jesus prayer or the arrow prayer in the Coptic tradition. We use a prayer rope. I don't know if it's the same thing. Yeah. So put that in your pocket and concentrate on that, and see if after a while that helps you to refocus, to come back to where your mind is supposed to be.
Earlier you said that one of the devil's biggest tactics is for us to not think he exists at all. I know that there's a fair few viewers that friends of mine or Chris and so on and so forth who are atheists. They don't believe that the devil exists. They don't believe God exists.
So today, do you think atheism is a big problem?
Atheism is a problem for atheists. So what like his social sense, or
In a social sense. So do you think we are our civilization is degraded by more atheists? For example, second, we have rational thinking. They want this utopian world of rationality and science, and which they want to get rid of religion. That's the end goal. They want to get rid of.
Very irrational.
Yeah, for them it's rational, because how can a rational being believe in a God? For them it doesn't make sense. And So I'm saying, is it bad for society? Because when we get away from Christianity, we tend to have a society that's focused on these gender problems, and then I kind of need to be careful, but mental health and all this stuff, and I think that's really derived from the atheist or we hate God mindset, kind of like we hate God. There's all these genders. What are you gonna do about it? Nothing. We hate Christianity, and then they attack anyone that's against their own mindset.
Mm.
So that type of atheism, and even further than that is if you look at atheist countries, the only atheist countries were communist or maybe fascist countries, which destroyed almost everyone. So I think that's what the question is: atheism a problem for us?
It might be, yes, in that sense, even though it's sort of unpopular to say. But there's different types of atheism as well. Recently we had, like, the most popular was this new atheism. I think that's sort of dying out now. Slavoj Žižek, he's a Marxist philosopher from former Yugoslavia. He's now sort of one of the most prominent protagonists of so-called Christian atheism, saying like we want to get rid of Christian beliefs in God, in deity, in supernatural, but keep the Christian morals, and stuff, which it's not going to work. It doesn't really, you can't cut out a piece of cow and keep the cow as well. It doesn't really work like that. And
Richard Dawkins also recently said that. Like he would take himself as a cultural atheist.
Yeah,
yes,
he said he loves Christianity. He loves being a part of the Christian culture. He loves going to church and listening to the bells.
And
then the next sentence he says, "But whoever believes in Christianity actually exists it's irrational."
Yes. Well, have you guys heard of the Jefferson Bible?
No.
Oh, Thomas Jefferson's Bible, where he cut out all the miracles.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
really,
Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers of the United States, he wrote the Declaration of Independence. He participated in writing Declaration of the Rights of from the French Revolution. He participated in the French Revolution as well. Declaration on the rights of a man and a citizen. So when he was the president of the United States, he would cut out with scissors parts of the Bible and glue them into his notebook, where he would cut out, he would keep everything like the life of Jesus Christ. It would be sort of a harmonizing gospel where he would take from all, he would go in a chronological order, and he would put in his notebook all the stuff that talks about, his morals and teachings, but just cut out anything that's supernatural, all the miracles, anything that points to his divinity. So just cut that out. He said that's added by Saint Apostle Paul. Well, he wouldn't call him saint. Added by Paul. And he would just keep this his own Bible for his own reflection. And this is the founding father, one of the founding fathers, one of the most prominent presidents of the United States, who was the famous words from the Declaration of Independence is like, we believe that every man is born free. He had like 600 slaves on his property.
Yeah, wow.
And so maybe not women in his perspective. I don't know. Anyway, so it's a strange train of thoughts. And when you think about it, so this is how it ends up. You have leaders of your country that are, by the way, the Jefferson Bible for the last 100-something years is given as a present to every congressman in the United States when they elected for the first time into Congress. That they received that.
Is
says, okay, this is sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. This is what we're going to do. Just follow that, but don't believe it's true.
Wow. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It doesn't really. It doesn't produce good results.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just.
They say everyone is spiritual, but no one wants Christ.
Yes. Yes, it makes sense. Yes, it's because then you can say whatever you want. It's
You
lazy.
can do whatever you want.
Yes. So and exactly so. One of the reasons why when we say cultural atheism, cutting out God from the picture but keeping the morals of Christianity, it doesn't really work. The dignity of a human being that came with Christianity. That did not exist as a concept before Christianity. I've just heard one of our priests the other day talking about this. This was fantastic. He says, before Christianity, pagans believed that, in all segments of nature, there's some divine creature controlling it. With our belief in one God, the Creator, we liberated nature to be studied by scientists. Because what's the point of studying something that's controlled by, the God of the sea? So when you know that there's no such thing as God of the sea, and but obviously there's some patterns, and you have to think about it, start thinking, and you say, oh, look, it's actually the moon can influence the
the
oceans and
ocean. Yeah.
Oh wow! So the science appeared because of Christianity, because we sort of ordered the world in that way. And
I heard it was, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it was Thomas Aquinas who separated science and Christianity. He's like, well, science is good. We can use it to Christianity, but we have to separate it so we can really know what's happening here. And then that took a whole different route. That's not the...
Well, Thomas Aquinas, he lived a little bit earlier than Enlightenment, so he was there in the sort of time of scholasticism when that started, and that brought a lot of negative reflection, let's say, a lot of rationalism into Christian belief. I'm not saying that we are against rationalism, but being exclusively rational in today's world, I'm talking about today's world, but in any era, is just closed-minded. When you know that, well, not all of us know, but when you know that there's more than what you see, it's like being a blind person in a room saying, well, I can't see anything, so therefore there's nothing in the room. Well, if you try walking, you'll discover there is, and probably. Yeah. And so it's the same thing as you don't believe because I haven't seen it. I don't believe it's really there. I don't believe that there's God. Well, I can't convince you, and I'm not planning on convincing you. But you will, in the end, you will find out. Like all of us will. It's just. It's a little bit simplistic to think that only the things that we can see, touch, and smell and hear are real and exist. The human mind, I'm talking now purely from the scientific perspective, is an ocean of information and a studying field that we haven't even. We probably examined maybe like a cup out of that ocean. So it's everything that we find in that cup, we can't really proclaim that's true for the rest of the ocean as well. So there's no whale in the cup. There's no whales in the ocean. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I find within the reformers, they have no sense of mystery, and so I know you've probably seen the George Janko podcast and how he was really just perplexed by the idea of how can this piece of bread be my God? And he was just really focused on that, and he was talking about what would happen if it would fall to the ground and how everyone would lose their minds at his Assyrian church that his parents attend. And I was trying to address it in like so many different ways. And some Protestants, to give them credit, were actually understanding. And I worked my way through John chapter 6 and was talking about it and showing that Jesus meant that this would be his body and his blood. Now, as Orthodox, we say it is a mystery how this happens. We're not going to sit here and try and explain it to everyone, but we believe what Christ taught and what the apostles preached. And early church fathers, Saint Ignatius, they all have the consensus. So I don't want to go on a tangent, but I want to say that element of mystery is sort of divorced from modern Christianity, and it's a big shame.
Yeah, I think in terms of, we've probably moved on to the next like ground, in the sense that, when we're talking about cultural Christianity. I'll just read a bit. Some fell on stony places where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And then Christ's explanation of this is in verse 20. But he who received the seed on stony places, this is he who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures only for a while. For when tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, immediately he stumbles. It's more so, I think, the cultural Christianity thing. I don't want to dig out Protestants in terms of the reality. Actually, my family are all majority Protestant. And interestingly, I think a question that would be really helpful is, what is the value in the reality of the Eucharist, the reality of the sacraments, the reality of these spiritual realities? Why is it that when we take it as reality, what are the benefits of that, as opposed to seeing it as symbolic or seeing it as good virtues to take on paper, but in terms of living by it, I'll choose my own sort of morality in that sense? What do you guys think?
I'll just say, sorry,
Yeah,
just quickly. I think the main answer from my perspective is that's what Jesus intended. And that's what is most important to me when I'm reading the Bible. Whether or not you can get anything else out of it and how is it going to apply to my life. I mean, this is what he meant when he said it, and that's more than good enough for me, personally.
Yeah.
You know, if I try to find an answer, it might be easier for me to find a negative answer, why that's not true, because that's going to make it easier for me. It's going to make my life easier as well. And that's what happens a lot when we rely solely on ourselves and our own interpretation. Why do we ask for the interpretation of the fathers? Well, first of all, as you said, it's in the Bible. The Bible is read in the context of the church because it comes from the church. The Bible did not just, fell down from sky. It's part of the church. The church fathers that have been glorified by God as saints, as living saints, agree that this is a reality. So I can either agree with them and trust them. When we say we believe, our belief is trust. I can trust them or distrust them. That's my decision. I choose to trust them. Just like, you go to a certain shop because you trust the guys there that they're going to sell you a good product for, a fair amount of money or something, because you know them and whatever it doesn't matter. But, buying something from someone, you pick the place where you actually trust the people. So it's the same here. We are not apostles. We are not witnesses of these things. We haven't been there. So any atheist can tell me that, well, how do you know it's true? Because you weren't there, you didn't see it. I didn't, but who do I trust? I either trust Slavoj Žižek or Christopher Hitchens, or I trust the saints and I can see the saints. That's one of the problems with Australia. It doesn't have that many saints. It doesn't have relics. It doesn't have, miracles that are happening on the graves of these people for hundreds and thousands of years now. You have people who have been, who died 4, 5, 6, 700 years ago. Their bodies are still preserved. They were not mummified or anything. They just they were buried in the ground, sometimes without a coffin, sometimes in muddy waters or somewhere, and their bodies that have been dead for hundreds of years, they have muscles and skin and hair, and they smell beautifully. And when you touch them, you that are now 25 and feel that you are alive and good, you get healed from your own sicknesses and diseases from this guy who was a cripple and died 500 years ago. And because the force of Jesus Christ works through him. These are if he didn't do any miracles, we wouldn't have reason to trust him, but he did, as he said himself. That's what we base our belief on. So the sacraments, or the mysteries, as we call them, in the sacraments is the Western equivalent of the Eastern word mysteries, are the way that the grace of God that is invisible or we are participating in that grace, or the grace is participating in our lives in a visible way, that we can actually experience it. And that's why all the mysteries, including the Eucharist, or probably Eucharist as the mystery of all mysteries, is so important for us.
So the seed that fell on the stony places, it says that immediately something sprung up because they had no depth. Well, hold up.
Yeah, people were happy to hear it, and they were enthusiastic about it, but then after a while they just lost.
Yeah.
We see it all the time in the church. When people hear the news, not through us. It's not like priests or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe podcasts, I don't know. they find the word, or the word finds them. They come to church. They're enthusiastic about it. I'm talking about mostly young men. And then they just disappear after a while. Usually with the first tribulation or temptation in their life, or maybe not the first, but the first serious one, they're just never to be seen again. And so why is that? Because you need deep roots to stand firm when it gets tough. It's easy when everything's nice. It's easy to be a Christian. It's a couple of years ago, I had a young man coming to our church, and he wanted to buy a prayer book. So he was looking through different types of prayer books, and he was going for do you have something bigger than that, bigger than that, bigger than that? And in the end, I took out a children's prayer book, which has only like very short morning, evening prayers, before, after meal, before, after studying, stuff like that. It takes literally like 6 minutes to read the whole thing bilingually. I said, okay, take this and come back and read it every morning, every evening. Only the morning and the evening parts, nothing more. Come back in 40 days. If you have completed it every time, every day, 40 days, you'll get a new one. You'll get a bigger one.
Yeah.
You're still on the small one.
Yeah. Baby steps forever.
I mean, I'm convinced. I'm sure that he's gonna, in the end, he's gonna have the, whatever the biggest prayer book you can find.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work like that. And if you skip those baby steps, that's very hard. And that big prayer book that you take on yourself, or the big task, or the big whatever, that can be your the stone around your neck, because it's going to get you down, because you skipped a very important part of growing. Why does that plant, the seed that sprung up on the rocky ground, it dies because it took everything that was all the nutrients, everything that was around it is now used up. The sun comes up, there's nothing to preserve it anymore. That's what happens to us. If there's no one, what does that mean? Basically, is if you don't have a community around yourself, you can't be a Christian on your own. You do that while everything's fine, and it's not a problem. But as soon as there's a problem in your life and you don't have a community, you don't have the church with you, who's going to feed the ground?
Yeah, you can't be a Christian online. That's something that I've seen a lot through my page. People are they're actually hungering and thirsting for a church, and sometimes they don't have one within a few hours radius in America, especially, and they're finding it very difficult. And then there's other people that enjoy just being online and debating, and they think that's the essence of their faith, just arguing with people and showing them that they're right about a historical fact. But yeah, I definitely experienced when I started coming to church the importance of a community, and yeah, having more services, more attendance is it's like food. I need to keep this nourishment up, otherwise I'm gonna get hit by the sun and destroyed. So, Father, do you think the roots, the deep roots, are a certain amount of time, or do you think it's a level of experience that you get? How do you reconcile that?
Well, not talking about the actual text, talking about our own roots in the church. I don't think it's us. You get. Pause that now for a second. I'm just going to ask, what's the word in English for when you put a plant on top of a plant? You know how
You graft it.
Is it grafting?
Yeah.
Grafting.
Really,
Okay.
I haven't got over.
Yeah, I know how it's done. I've never used the word in English. Yeah, so we are not being just planted; we're being grafted onto. So you take one plant and you actually sort of stick it onto the other, so it feeds on the root of the other plant, and so you have this hybrid. So we are basically spiritual hybrids in a sense that our roots are the saints of the church, and the fruits of life that we get through them are coming from heaven, and they come from God. That's what gives you strength. You can't have your own. You can't fight a battle on your own strength. And that's one of the things that we do in our baptism as well. Like the end of baptism is we cut the hair, right? We do that tonsuring of the hair. We do that when people are getting ordained as well, like first step of ordination. There's that story about Samson in the Old Testament where they said, "Don't cut his hair because blessing of the Lord is, and he'll be strong while his hair is long." So as soon as his hair is cut, he lost his strength. Later came back. So the reason why we do that, tonsuring and baptizing, is to, God now just being baptized, God gave you the potential of everlasting life. He gave you everything. So what can you give back to God? It's perfectly fitting after receiving such a gift that you give something back. What can you give to God that He doesn't own already? You can give Him your word. That's the only thing that's only yours. Your decision, your free will. And you say, okay, from this moment, I'm not counting on my own strength or the strength of the, human beings or this fallen world. I ask for the strength from God for the ministry that I'm taking on, be it royal priesthood through baptism or actually ordained priesthood of the altar. But the strength, the grace that you get for that ministry comes from God, and it comes through you giving that promise to God, saying, I can't do this on my own. So this is why you need the roots. If you're not sort of grafted or planted into that ground with that kind of a root, then you have a limited time that you can spend fighting, and after that you're done.
Yeah, that's really good. I think we'll move on to the next ground. The next one is let me find it. So verse 7 says, "And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprang up and choked them. But others fell on good ground and yielded a crop." Oh, that's gone too far. Okay, yeah, so thorns, and the thorns sprang up and choked them. And then Christ's explanation of this in verse 22. "Now he who received seed among the thorns is he who hears the word, and cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the world, and he becomes unfruitful." So earlier you were talking about how we graft in the church. We graft on other roots, and these roots are supposedly good roots from the same sort of tree. I guess we can, if we unpack it a bit more through baptism, we're all part of the same tree.
The tree of life.
The tree of life, and we support each other in that. And obviously, biblically, especially in Exodus and throughout the whole Bible, there's the constant, I guess, symbol of idols and how we make idols and we make idol worship, and they become the thorns, and they become the thing that distracts us. And even Christ says that you must love me more than you love your own father and mother, and so on and so forth. So what are some of the main thorns that get in our way, or some of the main things? George, you might have something to say on this, like the main things that you've seen in others that often choke us or distract us, or we often worship when we're supposed to be worshiping God. We worship those things instead. Thoughts?
Oh, well, look, I'll speak for myself. It's not even what other people have said to me. It's really, in my own experience, I think we tend to hyper-focus on our current sort of season in life and forget about anything else. You know, when I met Chris at uni and we're studying together, the only thing that matters is this assignment. You know, or the Bible, don't worry about a youth meeting, church. I need this assignment. I need to get a good mark because I'm trying to transfer. You know, then, you know, maybe you start talking to a girl. Now, this is the only thing that matters. I need to message her back. And you can make anything in your life at that point something that this takes all your attention, all your energy, all your focus. And it's very easy to neglect the spiritual life. And now I'm in the season of I'm getting married in 2 months. Thank you. You know, going from talking to the broker, I just got a new job as an OT as well. So I'm like starting the job. I've got this whole new career to focus on, and I've got talking to the banks, the brokers, looking at houses like 3-4 days a week. You know, planning the wedding, planning the honeymoon. There's so many things, and if I let myself go and don't say in the morning, I still have to pray. At night, I still have to pray, and during the day, I have to read the Bible. If I don't have this canon, it's so easy for like, oh, it's been 2 weeks and I haven't even picked up the Bible. Where did the time go? So from my own experience, it's sort of just focusing on different parts of your life as if that's the only thing that matters. Yeah. You know, once I'm married and live in a house, all that time that I wasted not reading the Bible is going to catch up to me. Yeah. You know, so sorry. So I think sort of being very intentional with being consistent in spiritual practices is the only thing that's going to get you through life. You know, half decent Christian. Otherwise, I think it's very easy to fall away from your faith. And when people are coming to the church, I see that, like myself, at the beginning, you don't know it's a marathon. You're sprinting and you think you're doing so well. And then, you know, 1 year, 2 years, now it's been 10 years. And after 10 years, you start to realize this is a long run. You know, this is not a joke. And I need to continually pace myself and just be consistent. You know, maybe I need to go back to the kids' book. You know, that's yeah, it's so helpful. So
yeah, Father, like George was just saying there, like all those things that he was saying are quite good.
Absolutely.
Good. His job, getting married soon, all of these new things popping up in his life. These are all good things. How do we frame it within a Christian way, like a Christian light, so that they don't turn into thorns? We don't want them to turn into the main things, and the main things we're focusing on. We want them to be kind of like the filling of that pie.
Yes.
Yeah, you got the analogy.
Yeah, the thorns are the 4 major banks.
Nab.
So, no, I agree with everything what you said, and just, you know, fast forward 15 years now to, you know, it's still the same thing. Now, I'm not just, you know, I got married 15 years ago, but, you know, I'm still struggling with the same kind of stuff. You know, you still have to pay off your bills, and now you got kids to worry about and all. And as you said, all of those things are good things. So you can't say, oh, I can't, you know, take care of my kids now because I have to pray. I can't, you know, go and work. I'll lose the house and will, you know, I don't know, be homeless for a while because I have to come to church. And however, it's just putting those things in their right places. Again, this doesn't come only to bad people or something. It's the enemy whispers into your ear every time you have something going on. You get that text on your phone. He's the one telling you have to check it out now. It doesn't matter if you run the red light and kill someone's child. This is very important. Turns out to be an ad for
Chris sending me a meme.
Yeah, it's always something trivial that gets you into trouble. So I've been a priest now for 15 years or so, and say hearing confessions from people who are dying, I've never heard, I wish I worked more. I wish I don't know, read more of my texts sooner or something. Or people at that moment, things come into perspective, and you put them in and no one's saying, oh, my mistake was buying a house. No, of course it's not. Your family has a roof over their head, and they're happy and healthy, and that's very important in life. But that's still gonna happen. That doesn't. I remember talking to a wonderful couple that they help a church a lot, but they don't come to church. And I was trying to, find a nice way of inviting them in somehow. And the husband works a lot. I mean, they both work, but the husband works a lot. And at one point, the wife says, maybe we should come like this Sunday or one of these Sundays. And he looks at her and says, yes. And then when I lose my job, we will live under a bridge somewhere. And I said, well, you might be surprised, but we have a bunch of people in the church, and they all have a house. None of them are actually homeless. They all work, some of them very hard, maybe some of them harder than you. Just come and check it out. See if that's something, because I'm sure you can fit in God somewhere in your busy schedule. Because at the end of the day, He puts you in His schedule. That's why you're here. It's just us sometimes being so naive, thinking that we can actually control something in our life. You get a fever, your body temperature rises 2 degrees, and if you're a male, you go to bed. Everything stops. The world doesn't exist anymore. You're dying. So it's and all of a sudden you find out that you're not that strong, and that not everything depends on you. You get up in the morning to go to work, a bus hits you, they send your wife some flowers and say next day, the job is still being done. Someone else took care of it, probably ChatGPT.
Most likely.
But it's, I mean, the most important thing is, yes, all of those things are good things. So we're not talking about the obvious things like, oh, you went out, I don't know, worshipping Satan and you didn't come to church. That's wrong.
Yeah, of course.
That's like that. That's a no-brainer. But all of these things, taking care of your family, doing all your work, doing your assignments when you're in uni, so that's all important. It's still, something that you have to do, but it does not exclude God from that. Include Him into it. Invite Him. If you're studying theology and you're writing an assignment about some Holy Father, pray to Him. Ask Him for help as well and for guidance. Don't observe Him as some sort of a
text.
Something that's sort of,
like a historical article.
Like an article, something you can just, go around and examine. No, just, get into a relationship with Him. Talk to Him. Talk to God. Ask God to say, if you have, troubles of this world and you think that they're actually overwhelming, ask God to help. Who else will help if He will not? There's a man was driving around and he was looking for a parking spot and couldn't find one. And he started praying to God because, this was a very important meeting. He said, God, if I find a parking spot, in the next 5 minutes, I'll be a good Christian for the rest of this year. And then it was 4 minutes, and he said,
It was December.
if I find the parking spot in the next 4 minutes, I'll come to church every Sunday.
Yeah.
And then it was 3 minutes, and he said, I'll be fasting this Lent, on
Cutting a
water.
deal. That's a big deal.
And then it was 2 minutes, and he said, God, don't worry about it, found one.
Exactly.
He found one himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we ask for something from God, and then we don't get it straight away. When I was a kid, I would ask my parents for something, and I wouldn't get it straight away, and I would think it's unfair. I'll get it myself, but I can't. So you'll find another way. So, but the things that I'm not getting over today with my own children, if they're asking for something and I'm not giving it to them, it's not because I don't like them, or I don't want them to be happy or to have this. It might be that I don't think that's good for them at this moment. They might get that thing, whatever it is, a little bit later or never, if I don't think it's good for them. So maybe when I'm praying to God and asking Him, maybe He's doing me a favor by not answering. When we talk about suffering, we can give the reason why I don't like publicly speaking about it is when we talk like this, it's easy to give a good answer, a witty, smart something, But however, when you speak to parents who have a terminally ill child, that's no time for jokes. When you speak to, parents who are burying their child, or children who are burying their mother or father who just died too young, then they ask you why. I don't know why. So what kind of answer can we give for that kind of suffering, that kind of troubling? We have to be, when we talk about it publicly, we have to be very serious and take that into account, that someone someday that's in that kind of situation will look at it, and we don't want to hurt that we don't want to make that wound in their soul a deeper wound. So maybe the easiest way to explain it is, if you go to a gym and you have a trainer there, and you ask him to go easy on you, okay, don't make me suffer, and he never does, you're not getting results back. You're getting a good friend, someone who's he's going to be chatting to you. He's you're going to feel nice. You're going to feel okay. He's going to make you feel like you're doing something, and he's going to make you, and you're going to feel comfortable. But that's all a big lie. And as soon as you come home and step on that scale, or something more serious happens in your life, you'll realize that he didn't do you any favors, and you didn't do yourself any favors with that. You were supposed to be suffering at that time in order to prepare yourself for something that's coming. So sometimes that suffering, I can't remember anything good that comes without a little bit of an effort. And effort is suffering. Suffering is an effort, always. Being comfortable, there's nothing wrong with being comfortable from time to time, but if you are comfortable in one position, there's that famous story about a lady who was complaining to her priest that all of her kids are healthy and listening to the parents, and the crops are nice and good, and all the animals are healthy, and they have no issues, no problems in their lives. So obviously God left them, because there's nothing, so nothing's happening. So if you walk into a dark alley and there's not a sound to be heard, you get scared. Of it's unnaturally silent. So you want a little bit of tension there. So that bit of effort that's happening in your life, or that little bit of suffering, sometimes more, sometimes less, is actually something that is good for you. So sometimes by not answering your prayers, He's doing you a favor, or He might be answering them in a different way.
I think biblically we see that a lot. Joseph, Job, Jacob, even with his wife, they all waited. Like Joseph, for example, at any point, at all the points in the time he was praying and asking God, Lord, take me out of this situation, take me out of this well, take me out of this prison, take me out of like the Potiphar's wife, that everything. But he kept on choosing God, and then received the blessings. Same with Job. His whole life was just thing after thing, complication after complication, tribulation. But I think God's answer was wait, trust me and wait. Yeah.
I had a grandmother. She was born in 1903 in what was then Austro-Hungary. And
First time to be born.
huh?
First time to be born. You would have been
Well,
World
at
War
least
One.
that part of the world, yes. So she got married after she survived World War One and the Spanish flu and all that.
Wow.
She got married, and it was a hard life. And now, after World War One, this was now called the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenians. Then it changed into the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. Roughly around that time, when the country changed its name, my grandfather migrated to Canada.
Wow.
And she stayed. She was supposed to join him later, but he would come back to visit, and after each visit, they would have another daughter. And she ended up right before, maybe so in the mid-30s, she was there with 3 daughters. And the last time he went to Canada to work, the World War II started. And so she was stuck in what was then, during World War II, independent state of Croatia, which was a puppet Nazi or fascist state. And there was a concentration camp some 6-7 kilometers away from her house called Jasenovac, where 700,000 Serbs and some 20,000 of them were children, and tens of thousands of Jews as well were killed. This was not. This camp was run and operated by priests of the Catholic Church, and it was not an industry of death like in German camps. This was a camp where people were slaughtered by knives and killed by hammers, and they all canonized as the martyrs of Jasenovac. My grandmother, who was the youngest of the 3, she was taken to that camp 3 times, and each time a German soldier would take her out from the Croatian soldiers, saying she's too young, and he would send her back. Her eldest sister, or the eldest daughter of my grandmother, she became a communist by the end of the war, because she was in the resistance. And after the war, she got married straight after the war to some guy who was in the communist secret police. So that's like communist to the bone. And the middle one got married to some local guy from the next village who was, just grow up in a communist country. So like not an ideologically involved person, but indifferent to religion. And my grandmother, who was supposed to then go with her mom to Canada, she was already, I think, 18 or so. She ran away the night before travel and got married to my grandfather, and she stayed. So my grandmother went to Canada without her daughters and joined her husband there and stayed there for about 20 years. And she came back. Now, she lived in Canada, a Christian life. She was a Christian from, from her childhood. She was raised as a Christian, a dedicated Christian. She comes back in the 70s. So that's the peak of communism in Yugoslavia. Her husband dies soon after they came back, and she stays as a widow in a communist country. She's a widow, Christian widow, in a communist country. The church that is, maybe 300 meters from her house, was completely destroyed in World War II. There's nowhere to go. Like a priest comes once a year and there's a liturgy, she goes there. And the only book, she was illiterate, but the only book she owned was a Bible. The only topic she had in her life was Christ. And she would just talk about that. You can imagine how much that annoyed her children, her daughters, and her grandchildren, including my father. It's just, not in the sense that they hated it, but just they were not interested in it.
Yeah.
There's so many things, it's the 70s.
Yeah.
The world just opened up, and the boomers enjoying and she's talking about Jesus and how you should always pray, be thankful to God, go to church. They don't even have a church. They don't know what she's talking about. So her daughters are now all living, let's say, godless life. Grandchildren, a lot of them, none of them goes to church. Grandchildren, too small, can't talk to them, including myself. Then I started school, and on my way to school, I would pass her house. And every time I would, on my way back from school, she would be in front of her house with some lollies. She says, come on in.
Yeah.
So I would come on in for the lollies, and she would talk to me about the Bible and about Christ, and I didn't understand anything. Like the things that she told me about, I've studied that later at university, and then I understood what she was. Obviously, she wasn't a theologian. She wasn't, giving me this some profound knowledge. She was giving me simple life-saving advices that didn't sound too deep, so you didn't really think about it that much. But then when you started studying, St. Simeon, the new theologian, you said, my grandmother talked about this. I know that. And so how prayers get answered? She died about 10 days before the final extermination of Serbs from that area that happened in 1995. And we were all dispersed throughout. That's how I ended up in Australia, half my family around the world. And but then I got interested in the church, in spirituality, went to study, became a priest. Obviously, my parents were touched by that, and they are, church-attending Christians who come and, every Sunday to church, as is my sister, as my relatives, as my grandparents did as well, because it just affects you. You live in that kind of surrounding. And when you look back, so all of her prayers of maybe 50, 60 years of, being, but when you say like, this is a story of 2.5 minutes, but that's like 50, 60 years of life every day going through that, living alone, being sort of deserted. And living alone in a communist country where you can't go to your neighbor and say, none of my kids are going to church. I don't know what to do about that. You can't even say that to anyone. So that kind of dedication actually came back fruitful.
Yeah, very.
Well, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
At least it did for her. I'm sure about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think in that story, it sums up a lot. It sums up the fertile ground. And it, as you were saying earlier, like you could see that her roots were deep because she went through so many tribulations and still held to it so steadfast. And then, as you were saying earlier, again, that from her fruits, which have fallen off to you, that those seeds have produced 10-fold and 20-fold and so on and so forth. Reminds me of the story of Ruth.
Yes,
for sure. And then she lived her whole life, constantly choosing God when she didn't have the right to choose God. She didn't need to leave with Naomi and be with her mother-in-law. She didn't need to go on Boaz's farm and glean the field. She could have gone into what at the time would have been more appropriate, or what others were doing, and go into prostitution and lawful things. She chose God in every step of the way, and she didn't even really experience the blessing while on earth. But when she passed away, she was in the lineage of Christ, and we're talking about her today, and so on and so forth. So that goes to show that it's not all about what we gain from here. It's about what we give to others and gain in spiritual rewards for sure. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think also it kind of answers the question when people say, "Oh, why does God allow suffering? God allows suffering. I'm not a Christian or whatever. I don't believe in God." And these guys, like a needle has touched their skin and said, "Oh, why does God allow suffering?" But then you look at countries where they've gone through the worst persecutions, and there's still Christians everywhere.
Well, as the fathers say, the blood of the martyrs is the seed for the church. Without that suffering, the Christian. So I'll go back to Yugoslavia again. Yugoslavia was a communist country, but not in a sense as a Soviet kind of a country. Where the Orthodox Church was not persecuted in a sense that, at least not from the end of 1950s to the 1980s. Priests would not be like shot in the street just for being priests, something, but you would end up in jail here and there. But the church was ridiculed, and it was presented as something that is completely irrelevant for the future. It has nothing to offer to anyone who looks, to the sky and believes in, you see. Rocket landing on the moon, and you say, well, what is this, local priest talking about? And all the churches were supposed to become museums where you could come and see, oh, look how, unbelievable that people 500 years ago could paint a picture that's not that bad. So it's that was the idea that's how Christian, and that would work if it wasn't for the persecution that happened in the 90s. Orthodoxy would die out in these areas where Serbs lived in Yugoslavia, where they suffered. Because, when you look at Orthodox Serbs in the 1980s in Yugoslavia, vast majority of them would not know how to make the sign of the cross. They never received the Holy Communion. They were all baptized as children because it was a traditional thing to do, but they didn't go to church, they didn't worship, they didn't read the Bible, they didn't do anything that would actually make them Christian, that they could call themselves Christians. And if you would ask them about their identity, stating that they're Orthodox would come probably, on maybe, 15th place or something, after listing all your football clubs and, what your favorite food is and things like that. So all of a sudden, someone starts persecuting you for being Orthodox and think, what are they talking about? And we still feel that to this day. Sometimes we have people want to introduce some sort of a tradition to a local church. We say, nah, that's not really. What are you talking about? I suffered for Orthodoxy. I fought in the war for Orthodoxy. And now you're telling me I can't have meat on Fridays here? I said, yeah. Well, it's because they did suffer and they did fight for that without even knowing what it is, because it was the enemy that was persecuting, trying to kill them because that's their identity, that they started thinking about their own identity, thinking, oh, wait, really? I'm Orthodox,
that's very interesting. Yeah.
So without that, if you just continue sort of the comfortable life, and if you introduced internet in the 80s, that would be the end of it. Instagram and TikTok would finish it off.
Internet and TikTok is worse than communism.
Clip it.
Yeah. But it's that sort of the worst possible thing that can happen to a church is to become an imperial church, a church of the government, or in tandem with the government, or support of the government. Then you just become a religious public service, where people come for their free mental health session. They can just come and unload and leave and come back again in 6 months when again they have. Sorry if I'm taking this too long, but there's a story from the Soviet Union, end of Soviet Union, so end of 80s, beginning of the 90s. There's a monastery in Moscow, around Moscow somewhere, close to Moscow, where one of the local priests became sort of famous for being an exorcist. And then all of these communist, middle class, I don't know what would be the right word to describe them, but sort of suits.
Yeah.
They would come, like, these are respectful, can't say gentlemen, but let's say comrades of the Soviet society. They would come on Wednesday Vespers for their exorcism sessions. And then once it's done, the abbot of the monastery was not happy about this and he wouldn't allow it. But this guy was popular for it. There's hundreds of people are coming. So Wednesday evening, the church is packed. And after Vesper service, evening prayers, he reads the exorcism prayers. And all these middle-aged men and women start, barking and meowing and screaming and twitching and turning around. Yeah. And that went on for a couple of months. And then one evening, the abbot just walked in and just stood there and looked at them. And they all stopped. And they just looked at him. And he walked outside and then just continued. So what they were doing is that they were, as you know, they didn't know about stress back then, but it was affecting them. So they were just sort of unwinding, from a stressful. So they would come there, they would release the tension that they have, and they'll be good for another week. They don't need the liturgy, they don't need prayers, they don't need holy sacraments, they don't need mysteries. Wow. They just need time off. Some people would go to a football game, chant, yell, jump around. Yeah. Some people would go to a gym. These people would come here to the church, do the same thing, go back. It's done. So and that's what the church becomes when it's it's comfortable. But when they push you at least a little bit, I'm not asking for suffering and persecution as it's happening in different parts of the world as we speak, and we can only pray to God it stops as soon as possible. But a little bit of a divorce between the comfortable life and the church is always good. That brings good fruit to the church.
George, I'm curious what you think of this. So we read through all the different grounds that the seed was thrown on. What are your thoughts on would you say that everyone's all of them, or that some people are one, some people have maybe the propensity to be one or the other? What do you think?
Yeah, look, some people, I think we think that it's this group of people. They're definitely the rocky ground. I can tell that guy over there, he acts like this, so he's that ground. But from what I've understood, and correct me if I'm wrong, each of us have the ability to become the different ground on a different day. So for a while, maybe I'm the ground that's absorbing, and I'm very quick to act. I'm living according to the Bible, and I'm thinking I'll never become the first ground. What was the first ground? The
wayward.
The wayside. Yeah, the wayside, which is that's the ground that's usually the person would walk across. So it's a lot harder, and it had to be lifted up. So it sort of symbolizes the ego is lifted up, and it's hard. Like your heart is hard. You're not going to take anything in from the gospel, from the teachings of Christ. And so it's definitely possible that you can go from being this to this. But of course, as Father was saying, it takes time to get distracted by things and to neglect your spiritual life, and to eventually end up in a state that you've never imagined yourself you could be in. And through vigilance is how this is addressed, I would say.
Yeah. I'm not sure, it might be a personal question, but do you think the times that you've been, obviously we're all wanting to be in the good ground. I'm sure that all the viewers are okay, I'd rather be in the one where I'm a big tree that has lots of fruit. What does that look like? What does that soil look like? One we said was the church. What more is it? Is it just the church? Is it, I guess, our spiritual canon? What do you think?
Are you saying how do we
how do we have that environment for the word of God to sprout within us, for us to act upon it and for it to grow?
Yeah, I think what Father's saying, it's suffering. when we suffer, that's when do I have 2 properties or 4 properties? Do I have a Lamborghini or a Ferrari? Like none of that, it doesn't matter anymore. All of that, it goes to the side and you're left there before God and you're standing before him naked, and it's just you and God, and you're so honest in your prayer, you're so genuine when you cry out to him, and when you read the Bible, you're hungry and you actually want to get something from it. You're not doing it to tick a box. You're not praying just to make your spiritual father happy. And that's my experience. It's always when I'm suffering, it's always when it's a genuine pain that you're going to have a genuine prayer. Now, the trick to keeping that long term, I don't know yet. I haven't figured that out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Father, have any thoughts on that?
That's very well said, yes. And it's so biblically true to say that we are ground. We are earth. We are Adam. Adamah was made from dirt, from ground. And his job was to till the ground, so tilling the garden. And the word human comes from the word humus, not the chickpeas hummus.
Bring it in.
That's what we turn into later. But where we started from is humus, as in ground. That's the Latin word for fertile ground, is humus. And so the word human means fertile ground. Wow. To be truly human means to be all of that ground, and the wayside and the rocky ground. That can all be fertile, but and that fell into the fertile ground. That fertile ground wasn't fertile on its own. Ground is ground. It's what we make of it. So we have, if you were the sower and you came out with the seeds, and you inherited a plot, and you just go there and just sort of throw it out. Yeah. Don't expect much back. Yeah. But if you go first to prepare that ground and to do everything that's in your power to make it a fertile ground, then the results will come. So yes, we are all of that, all of us. We are, every part of that ground refers to all of us, but all of us are called to work on ourselves to be that fertile ground. And that is suffering. Or suffering is sometimes maybe a little bit too strong, because I don't want to sound like only people who are suffering are good Christians, or only when we are suffering we are good. It might be taken the wrong way as well, but it's true. But maybe a better word would be asceticism, or ascesis means training in Greek. And so when we are actually putting in an effort, when as I mentioned before, the example of a gym, if you go to a gym and you or if you run, the more you are running or the faster you're running, the more results you can expect. If you're just walking around or sitting, if you're sitting down, no results. If you're walking, that's better already. If you're running, that's much better than that. So the more effort you put in, more results will come back. Now, for us to find that fertile ground, is we need to come to the garden. For us to actually, get that physical results, you have to go to the gym. So that the right place for that is where the sacraments are. And that's the only way for us to be fertile. It's because if you want to be fertile in a sense that the seed of God, the seed of Logos, meaning to grow in you, you have only one place where you can find that, and that's the church that God has established. In that church, through the sacraments that He enables, and that give that, or that produce that grace through them. He produces the grace to us. That's where we can actually transform ourselves.
Yeah,
as from one ground to another.
Yeah, that's really good. I don't know if you have something to add on. No. Later in the parable, it says, "Because it has been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For whoever has," this is the part that I struggle with this a lot. Maybe it's I don't know the context of it, but I think we're getting it from here because you kind of touched on it. For whoever has, to him more will be given, and he will have abundance. But whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. I always remember reading this verse and not knowing what's going on. Because in other passages, it's kind of the opposite, where it's like, blessed is he who has little, for he will inherit the kingdom of God. I probably butchered that verse, but it's something close. I know I'm paraphrasing, which is bad, but
Orthodox are known for that we paraphrase the Bible. We don't quote the Bible.
Terrible. But yeah, in this it's saying for whoever has, to him more will be given, and he will have abundance. But whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. How do you guys view that verse?
Hard questions go there.
Yeah, hard questions. Look over here.
Well, there's that also the parable of the talents as well.
Yeah.
Where the more that you're given, more is expected from you, and the less you do with what you're given is less you're going to have.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how many talents you have received, but if you're not multiplying them, if you're not doing anything with them, they're going to be taken away from you. They're going to be given to someone else. And we can see that in our everyday life, in our spiritual life. That I've mentioned my grandmother as an example. An illiterate woman who could only sign her name, and she wouldn't know what was what letter, but she trained to do that. But she could not read the Bible. She could quote the Bible all the time because she learned that by listening to that in the worship ceremonies, in liturgies, in going to church and paying attention, not just, standing there just to tick the box. So she didn't have many of her, let's say, talents compared to myself. I would say I'm more talented or more equipped than her, but I can't compare to her in any way in Christian living. It's the difference between, I don't know, the seed and the tree.
Yeah.
So it's and of course then what I have only exists with her.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I without it?
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of in both of those parables, the same key applies, that what you have is not really yours. Only what you make with it is yours.
Yeah.
And everything in the end is everything we do, everything we produce, all the talents that we have are for the building up of the church. And if you don't do that, then you're just wasting it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm talking again, but on one of our other guests, one of the other fathers mentioned, Satan doesn't care if we're sat here doing a podcast talking for hours about God. He only cares when we're spending time with God.
Exactly.
So that, I always remember that, because at times I have the tendency to kind of read the Bible as a bit of a symbolic or theological text without delving deeper into just spending time with God. And I think that's a perfect example with your grandma who she took the core principles from the Bible and she dwelt on it and she spent time with God and she kept on reiterating it. And through that time with God, her roots deepened. And it's not simply just by knowing everything, as you were saying, she's illiterate. So yeah, that's just a good reminder.
Her talking to her children and grandchildren and grandchildren about God gave 0 results.
Yeah.
But her talking to God about her children, grandchildren, and grandchildren gave a lot of results.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, definitely something to take in. To use these things.
And we often have this, we trick ourselves thinking that when we do godly work, like being a priest, so all of my work is godly work, right?
Yeah.
So I go to a podcast, I go to church, I preach to people. So who has time to pray as well? Well, that's going to be a tricky one, And if you skip on that, then you'll still have your smart answers for tricky questions, but that's all going to be just fake and fruitless. It's not going to give any kind of results. And for I'm just taking this as an example because it's the most obvious example. But yeah, in all of our work, if what we are doing is a substitute for what we are called to do, then we're not doing the right thing.
Definitely. Do you think the same practically? Like, do you guys see that in your life, that the difference between just knowing it as opposed to using it as inspiration to go and talk to God yourself? Do you feel like a practical application in your lives? Curious.
I once heard something that if I'm doing work in the world, but I'm dead inside, everything I touch is dead. So if I'm dead, let's say I'm dead inside spiritually, let's say I'm dead and I'm a skeleton. What I like to do, I like to put on a nice jacket. I like to put on my perfume. I like to put on my scarf, and I try to cover that I'm dead. And everything that I do is dead. So if I raise my children while I'm dead inside, it's all dead work. And so the only way really to be alive is to connect yourself back with God. Because if you read the story of Adam and Eve, Adam disconnected himself from God. That's what caused death. But with God, you're alive. So the connection back to God makes us alive, and everything we do is blessed. For example, let's use your grandmother, how she prayed to God for her kids, and her kids came to God. Because she was probably lively inside, and everything she touched was lively.
That's really good. Yeah.
And they also had to lose their homes and everything that they own in order for them to open their eyes.
Suffering.
Yeah,
That helped as well.
Yeah. And I guess also, I love the seed analogy, but she threw the word of God, she threw those seeds everywhere, and she very well knew that she wasn't the one watering them. She wasn't the one maybe telling, what's the word? Like
Tilling the ground.
Tilling the ground, that's the one. But she knew that was from God, and God watered it, and God tilled the ground, and God raised it up even when she wasn't there. Yeah, I think that's great. Thoughts, George?
I agree.
I agree.
We can go on to the questions from Instagram.
Yeah, and
All the videos.
Yeah, and remind me, we need a question from both of you for the next guest.
Oh, wow.
There's actually a few questions on Instagram.
Yeah.
Or do you want to do the videos first or Instagram first?
We can do do you want the video?
We can do the video first. Just the video.
It's just a video, a quick one. And we'll just get your reaction on it.
Do you believe in God?
Every description of God that I've heard holds God to be all-powerful and all good. And then I look around and I see a tsunami that killed 250,000 people in Indonesia. If there is a God, the God is either not all-powerful or not all good.
I love Neil deGrasse Tyson. Seriously, I went to see him when he was in Sydney.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I listen to his podcast all the time. And he's one of the smartest men alive that has the dumbest conclusions about religion I've ever heard. And I always wonder, like, I can't have a conversation with him because he's so smart. Like, he's 16 levels above me. So it would be like him talking to me about, I don't know, science would be like talking to a cat or something. But then when he says something, because he's so focused on, probably as a physicist or something, as on the physical reality, that, okay, if we're going to talk about religion, try to look at it from our perspective. Okay, so we're not saying that this life of 100 years, or 50 or 80, doesn't matter, is the life. And this is it. And, some of us will be washed away by a tsunami and bad luck. We can't do much about that. And the rest will enjoy, living in the New York City like he did. What if God just filled heavens with saints, and they now these people who lived in such poverty that science could not provide for them food or shelter or anything, couldn't help them, couldn't stop the tsunami, then God sort of, I'm not saying that this is the answer, but I'm just saying let's think from another perspective. And he just evacuated them and placed them in heaven. Wouldn't that be a merciful God? And said, oh, you know what? You had to suffer for about the first 50, 60 years living there, but now there's no end to this blessed existence in heaven. It will be forever. To me, it's just very hard to understand. Let's try to look at it from a different perspective. I can't convince an atheist there is a God. He can't convince me that there is no God. So it's only about the empathy that we can show for each other that's going to make some sort of a difference in our lives.
Yeah.
Without that, there's no point talking about it.
George?
Yeah, look, the whole problem with suffering is always going to be the question that will feel unanswered, I think. And I've seen so many videos on it in the past, and I'm going to try and remember this explanation I that's coming to my mind now. If not, delete this whole part. So it's a story about a man. He's a farmer. He's got a young son, and he's got like cattle and stuff. And one day, his horses they run away, and his neighbor comes and he says, "Oh, bad luck! Your horses ran away." He goes, "Bad luck, good luck. Like, what do I know?" And then
maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah. And then a couple of days later, the horse comes back with like 20 more horses. And then his neighbor's like, "Wow, look at that! Good luck. Your horse ran away, but I brought more horses." He's like, maybe not. And then a few days later, one of the wild horses that hasn't been like tamed, as his son was working with them, he kicked his son in the leg and he broke his leg. And he's like, "See, that was bad luck over after all. Your son's leg's broken." He's like, maybe not. And then there was a gang of like thugs coming through the area, and they needed to recruit young, able-bodied men. And so now his son, broken leg, they don't recruit him. And the man says, "Look, good luck, your son, he didn't get taken away with the rebels." And so it was a story to sort of show the point that at the end of the day, all these series of events, we don't know what they're leading to. We don't know whether they're good. We don't know whether they're bad. And at the end of our lives, in retrospect, we'll have the best understanding of it, especially when God explains it to us,
Yeah, that's really good. And I always go back to all the biblical pretty much every biblical story in retrospect.
Yeah.
Is a glorious story. Even the story of Christ in retrospect, up until the point of the cross and the humiliation and all of the bad stuff. It was just victory in the end. And I think that also for me, when I have conversations, I have quite a few conversations with a lot of atheist friends. I always go back to Christ and the plausibility of the death and the resurrection of Christ. And when you take it with an open mind, an objective sort of lookout, in my mind, I guess that's kind of taken away the objectivity by saying in my mind. But I genuinely believe it is more probable that Christ died and resurrected based on the accounts, the same accounts that we use to talk about all these historical facts at the time, is the same historical accounts that we see biblically. I think it's just because there's a leap of faith in everything that we read, and the Big Bang is a leap of faith in itself. So I feel like in all these things, if you just try and take it with an open mind and read it for what it is, that's what helps me justify things, I think.
Yeah. And a lot of people like to say, I was actually at work talking to like my senior OT, and the topic of like what part of the world I'm from, and I told we used to be Yugoslavia, now I'm like Macedonia, North Macedonia, Greece, not Greece, all this stuff. And we talked a bit about religion and the sort of, the beef between like Serbians and Croatians and Greeks and Macedonians, and then he was talking about he's like, yeah, that's why my dad is a hardcore atheist. He goes, he reckons the world would be a better place if there was no religion, because all the wars are over religion. Which was, it's quite a funny statement, since the 20th century was, the bloodiest century compared to all other centuries put together, and that was based on atheist, on systems, ideologies. And as we were talking, he goes, oh, I don't know, like if I'm atheist. He goes, I'm probably agnostic, but I don't really know. He goes, but at the end of the day, I believe in science, so yeah, I don't really think there's a God or something.
Yeah.
And how do you sort of answer this question of like, either I believe in science or either I believe in religion?
Well, there's a lot more scientists who believe in God than those that don't believe in God. When you look at the greatest minds in the scientific history of the world, so over 90%, the overwhelming majority, believed in God. They were not all Christians, but they were all believed in God. We talk about science. Have you seen photos of the astronauts that are now orbiting around Earth? There's a handful of people that's not on this planet at this moment.
Yeah.
When you look at the photos from their workstations, they're full of icons, because most of them are Orthodox.
Yeah, I've seen
They're
that.
Russians.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The Orthodox country, Russia, leads today in today's world in space exploration. It's when you look at, I don't know, you guys heard of Tesla now. Everybody heard of him because of Elon Musk. But Tesla's father was an Orthodox priest. His mom comes from a priestly family, it's bishops and priests, and he kept a very diligent correspondence with some of them, talking about his religion, his beliefs as well, that we still have today. So, I might not be the best person to talk about science. I might not know much about it, but you can't say that, Nikola Tesla or Albert Einstein didn't know anything about it, and he believed in God just because he was too stupid for science.
Yeah,
I don't think that's true. And it's a completely fake and false argument to say that science and religion are in conflict. It doesn't work like that at all. Like I love reading about popular science, and I can't really say I can. It wouldn't be interesting for me to read like actual, so let's say a physicist work.
Yeah.
Understand a thing, but popular science and astrophysics, especially, as I said, I listen to his podcast almost every day, and it's fascinating because I believe and I see that in life that any scientific breakthrough is good for us. It's good for the Bible. It's good for Christianity, because it just proves what's already being said.
Yeah.
Because that's not the Bible was never understood as a book that's supposed to prove what was being said. No, it's the book of spiritual truths. Now we have the scientists, if they want to prove everything in there to be correct, and if they do their work the right way, that's the end result.
Yeah. No, one thing that I found was that, I don't know if this is true, but I'm pretty sure it is. Like I just don't recall my source. But most of the early church fathers were very, very well versed in science, because it was for them a means by which they're seeing God. Like, to understand God is to understand His creation, and then through that lens, they're like, oh, I can see where God is because this bird does this to care for its young, and this tree is like this for this.
So when you read St. Gregory of Nyssa and his explanation of the human body and stuff,
Exactly,
it's amazing. Some of that stuff is still. I mean, they use the science, the sort of top-notch science of their time. Obviously, a lot of that is now outdated, but that's not the problem of the Bible. That's the problem of the science. 100 years ago, scientists did not believe that there's another galaxy in the universe outside of the Milky Way. Not Bible. Scientists would say, or the astrophysicists said, no, there's only one galaxy.
Yeah, wow.
Today, they would not. If we said that, today they would be ridiculing us. We never said that because it's not our job. We don't even go into that. But we accept what they. So we accept everything that comes from that field of knowledge because it helps us. It's absolutely beneficial for better understanding of Bible.
And they sort of answer two different questions, where science, it answers the how, and religion answers the why.
Why? Yeah.
It's like a deeper layer, like Father's saying this. The Bible is a book of theology. It's about ultimate truth to life and to existence and to the deepest questions. It's not trying to tell you in Genesis that it was a literal 6 days and this is exactly how each. It's much deeper than that. I find people who are staying at the surface level as atheists and trying to discredit the Bible, they're not being intellectually honest about it. They're not trying to see it like you're saying from our perspective or from God's perspective, the suffering, for example. You're just trying to disprove it. You read it. I mean, today I put up a post and I've got this one reoccurring atheist in my comments, and of course I've got how many posts I've put out, how many people I've. I don't have time to look at the comments, but I always remember this guy. I always remember he's got a
friend.
He's my best mate.
Rent free in your head.
No, I remember his display picture is a cartoon, and he always comes out with like heavy arguments, or he does like he tries to put down religious people. You all believe in that and this, and today, man, everyone was engaging him, and he was going against everyone. Like the thread, I looked at it, there was like maybe 20 different people talking to him, and he was replying to everyone.
We commented.
Oh, you did, yes.
And he agreed. He agreed with me. He was like, "Yeah, that's fair enough." Like he was disagree with me. I was like, "Oh yeah, fair enough." And then I must be some expert or something.
Horrible podcast, man. What do you mean? This is the top dog already. But he's so consistent. He replies to everyone, and he's so passionate about a topic. And like before God changed my life, I was indifferent to God. Like there was no way I would go on a Christian page and try and argue with people about this stuff. So I find that they got a fascination with religion.
That's the only real atheism, when you're completely indifferent to God. And that happens to a lot of people who are in the church as well.
Yeah.
But being a militant atheist, attacking people on social networks for posting their religious views, either he's a troll, which might be a good thing. That's the only good thing if it is, or you are a God seeker. They're just looking for a good answer, and it might take some time, but it will come.
Yeah.
No, pray for him.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree. Definitely agree with the point you made about we're more concerned about the why as opposed to the how, because it's true. Like how that's like our fabric of reality. It's more so like we do things for a purpose with meaning. Like for example, I'm going to raise a child. It's not about how, it's about why. Like what is the benefit of that? There was a interview between Jordan Peterson and Richard Dawkins, and he mentioned Richard Dawkins said, "I'm more concerned on how we get a rocket to space than than whether God exists or not." Like he's more concerned about that. And there was like another interview where Jonathan Peugeot was like kind of questioning Jordan Peterson on it, and he's like, "You should have said, I'm more concerned about why we want to even get a rocket to space."
For sure.
Because that understanding why we're spending all this money on a rocket and why we're trying to like when that money could be spent for like world peace, poverty, all these things, understanding why we have that inquisitive idea of exploration and finding new things is far more important than how we're going to get the rocket, because that's what the idea is built upon. And it's like kind of like that seed where they were also saying there's a gospel series. I think might have showed you as well, with Jordan Peterson and a bunch of heavies. And they were talking about with the parable of the sower, how the idea of like Western civilization, which is quite kind of flourishing now, is founded on Christian principles. However, the idea of something like communism is founded on atheist principles, and you can see the fruits and where it went. So the idea of Christianity has stood the test of time. It's still flourishing 2,000 years later, and that is in evidence that seed, that idea, is placed in a reality which kind of prospers and actually grows that tree. And there's different ideas that don't.
Yeah, I find it funny how this Bible tells us this is how you should live your life, and it's prosperous. And then now you have all these other people with all these new ideas. Oh, but if you do this, this is what actually. But no, it's this weird book that's been that's fake, and apparently this old fake book brings the West to flourish.
Yeah,
It's when you mentioned that how and why, in that there's such narrow-mindedness of some people that so you're an engineer that builds a plane, right? I'm just traveling on that plane. I'm flying from Sydney to Melbourne. My problem, my concern is why I'm traveling. I want you to be fully concerned with how you're going to get me there. I want that plane to be, go up and down quietly, nicely, safely, so I want to survive that flight. The only way for me to survive it is if you do your job well on how you're going to do that. When people who are completely involved with the how question, it's surprising that they can't really step out of that a little bit and say, okay, there might be a why question and an answer there as well. It might not be my cup of tea, but someone else might be interested in that. Just as we are people, the why people are sometimes interested and fascinated, and we appreciate the how part of things. It's fascinating to learn how we went to the moon, and how to do whatever. But it's equally interesting to think about why would we do that. The first thing that the American astronauts did on the moon is they had Eucharist.
Wow.
We don't talk about that very often. When they say, atheism took us to the moon, did it? Really? The first thing that they did when they did, because they had to spend the night there before they actually stepped on the surface. And one, I can't remember which one, very easy to Google that information. One of those guys, he actually brought a little bit the pieces of the Eucharist from Earth, obviously from his church, and he consecrated and celebrated the Eucharist on the moon. First thing that was done by a human species on a different celestial body was to celebrate.
Was this the first time they went on the moon?
The first time they walked. So yes,
the Neil Armstrong that
he was. That I can't remember which one of them. We can find that out.
Was very interesting.
That's the first thing that was done. And the Gagarin, the Soviet pilot who was the first one in the orbit, one of the first things that he did was ridiculing Christianity, saying, "Oh, I didn't see any God. God this, but I didn't see any God."
Yeah.
And he thought that was very, and not just him. When you say a stupid joke with your friends, or when your boss tells a stupid joke and everybody chuckles, oh, that was a good one. We don't know. Everybody knows it's not. But
yeah.
So when he said, "Oh, there's no God," everybody said, "Ha ha ha." That was so smart. That was he really told him there.
Good one.
And then and I can only imagine the poor Russian village priests who maybe own one book and so thinking, "Are you that dumb?" To think that you can find God in an airplane or in a rocket. Look somewhere else, man. You don't need
Tower
a rocket to find God. And you can do that. You can go and fly around the earth, but you can't really understand a 2,000 years old text.
Yeah,
that's kind of dumb.
The illiterate people understand.
Yeah.
So and then you have there's ideologies competing for obviously for the turf as well. But on the other hand, you have the first people on the moon celebrating Eucharist, celebrating God. Buzz Aldrin, yes. So he's the first guy who celebrated the Eucharist outside of this planet.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. That's great.
And so and the Russians these days go up there with their icons. They have their prayer rooms, prayer corners where they pray and talk to God.
Yeah.
Of course, when you
Nice view in
stare
the
into,
background.
you stare into
That'll be-
that deep darkness, and that's exactly when we mentioned what's his name, Saint Gregory of Nyssa, and his book about the life of Moses and that walk uphill and standing in front of God, which is like the eternal darkness and the unknown, and all of that imagery comes back when you think about the space exploration, which is we're just beginning that. I can imagine people in 30, 40 years from now looking back to our time now, and when we talk about space exploration, how funny is that going to be?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I think for time's sake, and because we've taken too much of your guys' time, was there a question on Instagram you wanted to go through?
Yeah, one more question.
One more question, okay.
We kind of touched up on it, but I want to kind of go deeper. So, I think this is a very important question, and people who are generally trying to find God usually ask this question a lot. So, why do I sometimes feel abandoned by God when I pray during some difficult times?
Because I don't know. Say the same time, but I can speak from my own perspective and experience that we probably get self-consumed, and when we're talking about time of difficulty, then in time of my difficulties, I think about how hard it is for me and how good it would be if someone else would help me. And then I get completely consumed. And then my prayer is not to God, it's my whinging to me, about me. We have in Orthodoxy this concept of watchfulness, of nepsis, and the sort of popular spirituality in the Western world, which is often a mishmash of different religious traditions that are sort of butchered into something, informal.
Yeah.
They have this concept, and this comes from Buddhism, concept of mindfulness. Mindfulness is where you sort of step out of yourself and you observe yourself. And watchfulness is exactly opposite from that. Because if I'm praying to God and I'm the one who's listening to that prayer, then that prayer is addressed to me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't leave. This is the whole conversation just happens inside of me, and God doesn't get involved into that. But when I speak to my friend and I decide to tell him something that only I know, I do that with full trust. If I don't trust him, I'm going to say it. And if I'm asking for an advice or for help, I'm going to listen. I'm going to, at some point, I'm going to stop talking and listen and expect something back. And then if I really appreciate this friend, I'm going to follow on his advice. It's the same as talking to God. And I'm not saying this to judge, like whoever asked this question, it's a very good question, it happens to all of us. It's not something, I'm not saying it in a judgmental way, saying, oh, you don't know how to pray. And that's not it. We all do that from time to time. It's just, there's a good book by C.S. Lewis called The Screw-Type Letters, where he talks about stuff like this, and in a modern way, in maybe language that's very easy to understand for us today as well. He talks about when a guy starts to pray about, tell him to pray about his mother, but then, twist his, put this into his mind and put this image, and then ask him, and then start him on a prayer that will go. So in an end, that every prayer can become something that's futile and just a waste of time if it goes on a different tangent from where it's supposed to go. And if the first sign of that is that feeling of despondency and abandonment. No one's listening to my prayers. Yeah, someone is listening, and the answer is coming. But depends who you're talking to. If you're talking to yourself, then maybe no one is listening. But if you're talking to God, then definitely someone is listening, and the answer is coming.
Really good. I think we'll wrap up with our questions that we're going to leave for the next guest.
Oh, hell.
So we'll get a question each. It might be a priest, it might be just a special guest. So just like something introductory. It can be whatever. Doesn't have to be.
Do they get two
spiritual.
questions or just one?
I'm going to give them both questions.
Both?
I'm going to give them both. Any thoughts?
Give me a moment.
Yeah, that's all right. Take your time. So your one was top tip to holiness. So that's like, can you base it off it?
Top tip to holiness.
That was what we got.
That's not even a question.
Yeah. It was like a.
If you have a priest on,
Yeah.
what sort of question should we give them?
It can be anything. It can be like, I don't know, funniest thing that you saw. Like it can, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It can be lighthearted.
Maybe what's your favorite thing about being a priest?
All right.
Is this
Cool.
been asked? I don't know if it's
Yeah,
been
no,
asked.
well, yeah, it'll be asked. Oh no, I don't think
No,
we.
before
I
me.
don't think we've asked it. No,
Okay.
no.
Yeah.
No. All good. Father, do you have one?
It's hard to ask a question when you
You don't know who it's addressed to.
Yes. But yeah, maybe if I'm thinking now the same way. Like if it's a priest,
Yeah.
Would you reconsider your life choices?
Your priest or your life choices?
Well,
In hindsight.
life choices that brought you here tonight to this podcast.
Yeah, that's actually good. We're asking that. That's a great one.
Yeah.
Tune in
Wow.
to
Tune into
answer.
the next one, yeah.
Were you considering this whole time? What did I do wrong?
That was him asking himself. No.
No. I'm actually. This is for the. I'm coming back.
Oh,
It was so
that's
good.
great. Thank you.
I enjoyed it.
Really nice.
Thank God.
Well, thank you guys for coming on. I've definitely learned a lot. I'm sure the viewers would have learned a lot. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All good.
Thank you. God bless us all.